Good morning everyone and welcome to the Moneycontrol live stream. You're watching Markets with Santo and CJ. And well, Santo, another IT earnings and another set of disappointments.
Yes, Wipro's numbers have fallen short of what the market was expecting, but again, no big surprises here, really. CJ, I think if you look at the price movement closely of the stock, maybe the market was already anticipating something like this. The big problem for Wipro has been its margin miss, and that is what most analysts are also disappointed about. Quite a steep drop in margins quarter on quarter as well. Now, there are plenty of positives in the earnings also, and the commentary also seemed a little positive. The company has said that margins may have bottomed out for the time being. Its revenue growth guidance is also pretty strong at 3 to 5%. Net hirings are good. On the whole, the commentary is positive, but somehow, CJ, I don't think the market appears to be very convinced. If you look at most of the ratings following the earnings, the analyst tone seems to be quite negative. They are not really convinced that the company will be able to reverse the margin decline anytime soon. And about the strong growth in revenues which the company has projected, they feel that a lot of it has to come through the acquisitions, which they feel will be quite hard work. So, CJ, relative to other stocks, other large cap IT stocks, I think Wipro seems to be on a weak footing for the moment.
Well, Santo, I think, of course, Wipro also has taken the most of the hit. If you look at it from a year-to-date basis, probably is the worst hit among the top 5 IT stocks out there. But I also, concur with what the manager had to say, because if you look at the Q1 margin performance, about 15% EBIT margin for the IT services segment. Now, clearly, this was much below the 16.5% that the market was expecting. But in my opinion, I think we have seen the worst of margin. Because why? Because I'll see it in conjunction with what happened with the attrition rate. Surprisingly, for Wipro, the attrition rate actually moderated on a sequential basis in the first quarter, and that is something of that probably bulls will probably start looking at, because everybody else who has reported earnings so far, you talk about Infosys, HCLTech or TCS, they've actually seen worsening of the attrition rate. But on the other hand, Wipro is seeing, it seems like a turnaround or a sort of a rollover there. So that will be very important to see. And second part about you talked about guidance of about 3 to 5% of sequential growth. Wipro's net hiring actually was quite strong in the first quarter, about I think more than 15,000 net hiring in the first quarter. That goes to show that clearly the demand pipeline is quite strong for Wipro. Unlike Infosys and TCS, who have actually seen a moderation in hiring, a lot of people were construing it as a sign that probably demand is not going to be that great going ahead. Clearly, Wipro at this point of time is not seeing those sort of concern. In fact, the management iterated, and this is one point that I have also said in the past when when the market was beating IT stocks, that technology is no longer discretionary, Santo. It is now a priority. It is now a necessity for Fortune 500 companies across the world. So for me, I just don't feel that recession automatically means cut in technology spending. And I think that is where I think people who are looking at a contrarian way into the IT space would probably find a lot of comfort, because let's be honest, valuations are now quite reasonable.
Interesting how the stock has been pretty volatile. CJ, from the lows of the pandemic, the stock rallied almost fourfold. That's quite a big jump for a large cap IT stock.
It ended up recovering the 2000 highs. I mean, that is how great the rally was.
But then after that, it's been unable to sustain that.
Absolutely.
And this is one stock right now seems to be the weak link among the frontline IT stocks. And if probably the sentiment overall, the spending drops for whatever reasons in the coming quarters, maybe Wipro could feel the heat more than, at least that is what the market seems to be betting
probably
on.
But I think, Santo, probably the thing with Wipro always has been that it has always tried to catch up to Infosys and TCS, and it's always failed. I mean, CEOs have come in and CEOs have gone out, but they've never been able to catch up with those two giants, and therefore the discount on valuation multiples that it has always seen. I just feel that probably with the new management under Thierry Delaporte, it seems like he's doing a lot of things right in order to make sure that Wipro does catch up with its larger peers out there. And for me, let's see. I mean, how the big question, of course, is how the next 6 months will be for Wipro. What do you think? I mean, do you expect it to probably fall more, or do you think that probably now?
Well, that stock price, I mean, guessing that is quite tough. But I would say that there is a high probability that whatever be the case, Wipro's gains or could be lower than that of how the frontline tech
Well,
stocks
Santo,
went.
I think the only thing to watch here, you talked about it, analysts turning negative. I think analysts by default probably are always behind the curve than ahead of the curve in these sort of things. I mean, if you look at the consensus price target of Wipro, it has fallen almost 31% from January till today, earlier this morning today. So clearly, it's not like that the market has not anticipated the weak earnings, and even at this point of time, the current stock price is almost 15 to 16% below the where the market puts the fair value at of around 489 rupees. So clearly, I think valuations at this point of time seem too depressed for me, and I don't think that there is probably potential for more downside from here or downgrades from here. I would probably expect a gradual upswing for the stock going ahead, because a lot of long-term investors will look at this as a good opportunity to get a very, very good stock, a turnaround story at very cheap valuations. Well, that's it. Let's quickly now take a look at how the trade setup is for this morning. It looks like a very moderately positive morning for Dalal Street. If you look at the Nifty futures and the SGX, they're indicating about 20 to 30 point up move on the index. This would be almost the fourth consecutive session of gains that we might see on the last street, which has been a very rare sighting over the past few months. So clearly something to look forward to. US markets were actually quite good. They ended on a higher note led by tech earnings. Clearly Tesla's beat on earnings, other corporate earnings that we have seen so far clearly show that the earnings recession that a lot of analysts were fearing has not really materialized so far. I mean, companies have been able to manage costs. And the best part, the best news from yesterday, Santo, is the fact that FPIs were net buyers yet again. Third consecutive session. This is, by the way, a very rare sighting this year, because it has only happened once before this year. And that was in the second week of April, when for 3 consecutive days, FPIs were net buyers. So clearly, good omens.
Well, yes, and at the same time, there seems to be some bit of skepticism among retail investors. If you chat to brokers and fund managers, you'll get to you get a feeling that retail is at this point in time a little cautious, and that's not a bad thing, because often markets tend to do better when there is a lot of skepticism out there on the street. So in some ways, I think maybe the cautious mood among retail investors could lead to stock prices climbing.
Yeah, I think, Saito, it could be the the bottom of the cycle, sort of, when you are at the bottom of the U curve, probably you see those sort of skepticism being very loud and clear. I mean, you had, Moneycontrol yesterday or day before yesterday interviewed Rohit Srivastava, who's a very well-known technical and fundamental analyst, and he was of the view that probably Nifty will bottom at around 14,200, and he's just not convinced that this is, the start of a new rally for the market. He's saying teji, mandi mein teji, basically. That is his line at this point of time. So it will be interesting to see. It seems like the market is quite divided. There are skeptics out there, and we will have to wait and see how this unfolds. That said, let's quickly dive into the other stocks that are on our radar, Santo, today.
AU Finance, Small Finance Bank, a mixed set of numbers there. Operationally,
not really happy with that number.
Well, operationally it has been weak, but there are plenty of positive points as well, to look for. You've seen the deposits go up about 47% year on year, and also there's been an improvement quarter on quarter as well. Disbursement are up almost 3.5 times year on year. It showed a bit of a decline quarter on quarter. Its CASA has also shown significant improvement, and overall CASA ratio is also better. Credit costs have come down by about close to 30 bips. So these are some of the highlights, and the bank right now is trying to diversify its offerings. It's got a decent foothold in the home loan, wheels and SME segments. Right now it's a lot of work in progress at the moment, which is also resulting in higher operating expenses, but these should start showing results gradually over time.
Santo, the internals of this numbers, the quarterly numbers that AOS Small Finance Bank has come out with, seems a little, does not raise too much confidence. If you look at, some of the numbers in terms of, if I'm not wrong, slippages have increased to about, they were about 253 crores versus 195 crores in the previous quarter. So clearly that is suggesting, that there is still pressure out there on the microfinance book of the company, and a lot of people were expecting that March quarter was probably the worst that we had seen on the microfinance space, but clearly a lot of it is percolating to the June quarter as well. Also, surprisingly, despite the increase in slippages, provisions actually came down quite substantially, about 78% downtick on provisions on a quarter-on-quarter basis, which basically indicates that management was happy to sacrifice on the provision coverage ratio in order to show more growth in this quarter. So I would still be a little skeptical on this counter. Costs are rising, clearly that is weighing on the NIMs. NIMs have hit multi-quarter lows in the June quarter. So there are few good things to look at, but there are a few bad things as well in the company, and I think that is why possibly the upside could be limited on this counter. Well, another one stock or one lender where there is no chance that upside is limited in the near term is IndusInd Bank. What a blockbuster number from the company. Of course, the past few days movement gave you an indication that the market was anticipating a very good performance, basically beat all across most metrics in the quarter. And it seems like, on the asset quality front, they have turned a new leaf. Yes, you have seen a moderate increase in the GNPA, or the gross net performing assets ratio, and the net NPA, but overall it seems like, if you look at it from a past 7 to 8 quarter trajectory, it seems asset quality issues have now abated for the lender. And the good part is the loan growth. I mean, near double-digit loan growth in Q1. Basically, boards which suggest that probably going ahead, when actually June quarter is not really seasonally that strong. So when you get into the festive period, you could see even better growth numbers coming out from IndusInd Bank.
CJ, almost on every parameter, the company, the bank has performed quite well. And my only surprise here is that, the market seems to be a little slow in still appreciating it, because it
has been bitten in the past. No, that's why.
Exactly. So the bank, if you compare it with others like ICICI Bank, even HDFC Bank for that matter, it's been a bit of a laggard. It peaked out around April, and since then it's been under pressure for a while now, despite a continuous improvement in all the operating metrics. So I think there is a bit of skepticism. Most of the analyst reports for now are very positive on the stock, but it looks like it will be a while before probably fund managers open up their wallets decide to embrace
at this
the
point of
stock.
time, it seems like the pecking order is set, in the banking space. I mean, even if you look at some of the, the action from the institutional side, the pecking order seems to be ICICI Bank, Axis Bank, SBI, and then you think about HDFCs and your Kotak and the IndusInd Bank at this point of time. So clearly, IndusInd Bank is vying against HDFC and Kotak in order to be in the shopping list of fund managers out there. And I think that is why we have seen the stock performance not be that strong as, for example, it is for ICICI Bank.
Gland Pharma is the next stock on our portfolio, on our watch list this morning. Now, disappointing set of numbers, and not really surprising again, because the company has been grappling with syringe shortages. It is into the injectable generics market. Stock price has corrected quite a bit. In fact, it's almost halved from its highs of August 2021, and the pressure on the stock has been quite continuous. Despite that, there are quite a few positives to look forward to in the company. It is trying to add more complex products to its portfolio. That is one. And unlike the oral generics, price erosion in injectable generics is lower, and not only that, the inflation, there's a slight inflation there as well, also because of the fact that regulatory compliances are getting tighter, which means that many of the players are beginning to drop out. Besides that, already the company has proved itself in the US, and now it's trying to expand its market to other geographies also. And enoxaparin sodium, which is one of its key products, has a market share globally of close to about 10%, and it's trying to further improve that. Many things in favor. Mainly, the demand is not the big issue at this point in time. It's more of material shortages, and once that is overcome, then probably you should see the stock take off.
Well, Santo, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, for me, I think probably the weakness in the stock performance was clearly in anticipation of the numbers that the company has put out. Weak bottom line performance, weak operating performance, and this is, of course, let's remember that on a year-on-year basis, which means that the June quarter year ago was actually a low base for Gland Pharma. So clearly, there has been a lot of impact of raw material shortages, higher raw material costs. Of course, the company has also suffered because bulk drug prices have actually inched up in the past 6 months, thanks to the lockdown in China, COVID-related lockdown in China. So that has been a key concern for the company. And I think probably if you look at the trend, I think you can expect probably another 2 or 3 quarters of muted earnings going ahead, because this syringe shortage issue, which has been crippling the company, that is not going to abate anytime soon. And raw material prices overall also still seem to be holding quite firm in the bulk drug segment. So for me, margin remains a concern, even though, as you say, demand is probably not. So I would be a little cautious on the stock going ahead. Well, one stock which is looking quite good. Yesterday it rose about 5%, 5.5%. It's Zuari Industries, a small cap name in the sugar space. Now, it has been seeing a lot of, good momentum, largely on the back of optimism that we have for the sugar sector. And lo and behold, Dolly Khanna has actually increased her stake in June quarter. So clearly a big HNI name entering the stock should provide even more impetus. And clearly it is going to benefit from the ethanol trend that we are seeing in the sugar sector.
A quick look at the market before I counter your pitch on that stock. Nifty is down about 15 points. So it looks like a sluggish.
Yeah, very sluggish start at this point of time in the morning. But the breadth seems quite strong.
Yes, which means that mid and small cap stocks continue to be in favor. Nifty Bank is also under pressure in early trade. IndusInd Bank is up 2%, Hindalco up close to 1%, Sun Pharma up 0.5%. These are the gainers in early trade.
Yeah, it's surprising. I think it's the small cap names, Santo, who are doing well, because the Nifty mid cap 100 index is actually dead flat at this point of time. So clearly it is the small cap names who are doing quite well, but the market breadth still seems quite positive. And I think if small caps are doing well, Santo, then you don't need to be concerned about retail being cautious at this point of time. It clearly looks like a lot of retail investors are coming back onto the investment game once again. But Wipro, quite a sharp downtick, around 2% at this point of time, which is in line with the ADRs of the stock as well. The ADRs were down about 2.5% in New York trading overnight. So clearly, market is not really happy with it.
Well, that point about small cap is not particularly true. Yeah, you're right in a sense when you say that small caps, more activity in small cap basically indicates that retail investors are back in the game. But also, let's not forget, it works the other way around also. It's easier to manipulate small caps to give a feeling that probably things are looking good at this point and be able to draw in retail investors. And remember, many of the stocks have corrected sharply. Well, on Zuari Industries, just a couple of things here. One is that the sales growth, over the last many quarters now, almost for 5 years now, it's been very, very inconsistent, the numbers. There's been a bit of a jump over the last quarter. The stock had seen a lot of interest sometime in 2019, 2017 it peaked, and since then it's never been back to those highs again. Although it's rallied quite a bit, it's risen almost 8 times from the lows of the March 2020. Other point is what you made about Dolly Khanna buying stake in the company. Now, it works. I mean, it's not always a given that if a big investor does take stake in the company, it should really work well.
Wow.
Remember that Dolly Khanna had also taken huge bets on oil refiners, and I'm not.
She has actually increased stake in Manali Petro this quarter.
Yes. But you know how that story there played out. I'm not saying that they
I mean, you can't foresee government intervention like that.
Exactly. And you can't foresee market trend change either.
I mean, at least the thing that sugar sector has going for it is that the government is actually in favor of what is the trends that are happening on the ethanol space. So probably she's maybe hedging her bet there. Santo, before we go out, one of our viewers actually wanted your thoughts on the defense sector. You are one who has been very bullish on Hindustan, aeronautics and all. So what do you think?
Well, given the strong order book that you're seeing in both Hindustan Aeronautics and Bharat Electronics, at least on the face of it, the outlook appears positive. But the key thing here is, market's fascination with PSU stocks. Now, if you look at defense as a sector, it's quite good. But the multiple which market assigns to PSU stock, that keeps changing quite a bit. And if you look at the analyst commentary of Bharat Electronics latest number, it's not been all that positive. The stock has seen a good run up also. Both stocks in fact have seen fairly good run ups. So I mean, given my nature too, when it comes to looking at stocks with big run up, I would say that it's time to get a little cautious.
Well, there you have it, Abhishek Ranjan. Clearly, Santo is quite bullish, but I am a little, cautious because I have still my doubts that defense capex will work out the way the market has been anticipating. That said, now Santo, let's wrap up the show.
Yes, it's a wrap on this edition of Markets with Santo. Thank you for watching, and do share your feedback in the comment section below.
And as usual, guys, keep following us on the social media links that you can see at the bottom of the screen. And for the rest of your financial news, I don't need to say it. Stay tuned to Moneycontrol.com and download the Moneycontrol app. We'll catch you again live at 3 p.m. with all the day's action. Till then, have a great trading session.